I was given 1 week's leave at the end of square bashing, and this is the story of my stepfather, who was an Irishman, came from Larne near Belfast, and he was always boasting to me about the time he and his buddies went up to the hills to make poteen. And I was fed up hearing this story, and it never ever happened. Anyway, here's my story. Then I got 1 week's leave and was given my travel warrant to go home. From there I was to go to RAF's in Athens in Wales, about 17 miles west of Cardiff, not far from Bridgend. It was hardly worth going home, as it meant 2 days travelling time each way. I just got there and it was almost time to head out again. As things turned out, I really shouldn't have gone at all. Here's why I call this story More Than Slightly Sloshed. I arrived at our house in Campbelltown at 9:30 in the evening, after being on trains or waiting for connections in train stations for a total time of about 20 hours. I found 2 of my mother's Salvation Army lady friends visiting her, the 3 of them huddled round a roaring coal fire. Noticing a strange smell, I asked my mother what was causing it. She replied, "Oh, it's Bill. He's making whiskey in the wee room." To us Scots, a wee room is a wee bit weer than a small room. My Irish stepfather Bill was not of the Salvation Army persuasion. Very often in the years since he'd married my mother, he told stories of how he and his buddies would go up into the hills at Antrim and make poteen, the Irish equivalent of moonshine or homebrew. Even then I had no idea that it was close to 100% alcohol. I had heard him remark that he was going to make it one of these days. I'd heard it so often that I was sick and tired of hearing it, as well as many other stories of his that was next thing that might or might not have been true. Well, when my mother said Bill was making poteen, I couldn't believe it. I thought he was doing his usual bragging with no truth to it, and that wouldn't have been unusual. As I sat talking with the women, basking in their remarks such as, "Oh, Ian, don't you look so handsome in your Royal Air Force uniform?" My mother tried to get me to eat something. I told her that I was dead beat and just wanted to go to sleep. At this point, Bill came through, said hello to me, and asked me to taste his brew. What he handed me was a glass tumbler with about 4 or 5 ounces of clear liquid in it. Not knowing it was so strong, I had almost downed the lot when Bill shouted, "Stop, stop, that's all I've got." Because it looked so much like water, I had no hesitation in drinking it. Remember, I was not accustomed to alcoholic drinks of any kind. I didn't know at that time that I was drinking pure alcohol. There was about an ounce left for Bill after all his hard work. It had taken him 2 days to distill that small amount. Shortly after this, I started feeling a bit woozy, especially as I had virtually an empty stomach. A little while later, I said good night to everyone and took myself off to bed. Stumbling to my room, I stripped off, hopped into bed completely naked, and was asleep almost immediately. The next morning I got up, surprisingly clear-headed, and wandered into the living room. There was a fine white dust everywhere, and I said to Mother, "What is this white powder all over the place?" "Oh, that was ye last night, ye daft bugger," she replied, in the middle of trying to clean things up. "Ye came through here about an hour after ye had gone to bed, absolutely naked, walked in between my 2 friends and peed all over the fire." "You mean I came through here sleepwalking, stark naked in front of Mrs. Campbell and Mrs. McGregor, me with no clothes on?" I was horrified. My mother continued, "You should have seen the steam that ye created, plus all the ash that went up into the air with it. There was the stifling white cloud all over the house, not to mention all over the 3 of us. I think I'll be dusting here for a month. We were afraid to waken ye in case we did something wrong." To add to my embarrassment was the fact that both of my mother's visitors were strict Salvation Army believers. I realised that they thought about my imbibing, about getting fully pissed. Well, that was certainly somewhere above the forgiveness level. By then I must have been the talk of the town. Even a long time later, whenever I was home on leave and I saw either of these women on the street and heading in my way, I would cross over to the other side, just a wee bit more than slightly embarrassed. Strangely, no one but Mother ever mentioned the incident to me. Somehow it seemed my Salvation Army days were really over. To quote my mother, "Since you joined the Royal Air Force, you've gone to the devil."